Along a thin ribbon of sand, between the open ocean and a quiet lagoon, the villages are settling into dusk. The sun has just gone down. The light is soft and golden, and the sea is flat and calm. In Arop, men are painting a canoe on the beach. In Warapu, young people are playing football on the cooling sand. Their elders move slowly between the houses, and somewhere a mother calls her children in to eat. Further east, in Malol, the fishing boats are already in for the night. In Sisano, an old mission church stands, as it has stood for many years. Smoke rises from the cooking fires, straight up into a still evening sky. The air is warm. The water is quiet. Nothing moves that should not move. There are no cars here, and no street lamps. When the daylight goes, the dark is complete. It is an ordinary evening, at the soft edge of an ordinary day. Nothing feels wrong. Nothing looks wrong. And that is the cruelest part of this whole story. Because far out, beneath the water, something has already begun to move. The force is already awake. It is already on its way. It has already decided everything, and no one on this coast knows it yet. In this last quiet hour, thousands of people are living the final moments of an ordinary life. They are finishing their meals. They are certain the morning will come, and the morning will not come the way they believe. If stories like this stay with you, follow this channel and leave a like, so the next reconstruction can find its way back to you. And now, let us go down to the sea. For a very long time, off this coast, the floor of the ocean has been building a secret. Layer upon layer of soft sediment has piled onto a steep underwater slope. It sits there, heavy and unsteady, held in place by nothing but its own weight. Tonight, deep below, the earth gives one hard shake, and on that slope, something lets go. It is as if a whole hillside let go at once. Sand and mud, the size of a small town, sliding down into the dark. The ocean above it is heaved upward, and a wave is born, and it begins to move toward the shore. The energy here is almost impossible to hold in the mind. It is more force than every truck on every road in a large country, all of them lifted at once. Now, pour all of that into the time it takes to draw a single breath. Before we follow that wave, I owe you 3 answers. Why this disaster struck so hard? Why thousands of people were never warned in time? And what human choice turned a natural event into a human tragedy? Hold on to that last question, because the truth of this night is simple, and it is heavy. It was not only the sea that killed these villages, it was the things people had decided, and the things people had long ago forgotten. This coast carried an old secret of its own. The quiet lagoon behind the villages had not always been there. Long ago, in another year, the ground here simply dropped, and the sea rushed in to fill it. The land itself had sunk once before, without a wave, without a sound. And then the memory faded. People built along the new shoreline, and the sinking became a story. And then, not even a story. There was a second thing, older and larger, that everyone had stopped believing. The sea can rise. Far away, within the reach of memory, it had risen before and swallowed whole coasts. But that was somewhere else, long ago, to other people. So they built at the water's edge, because that is where the fish were. The lagoon gave them calm water and food. The ocean gave them a living. For 100 years it had given, and never once had it taken. No one built a wall. No one drew a line on higher ground and said, "Do not build a house below this point." There was no higher ground to run to, and no reason, anyone thought, to run. That was the detail ignored for a lifetime. These villages sat on a strip of sand 1 to 2 meters above the sea, no higher than a man with his arm raised. Ocean on one side, lagoon on the other, and no hill within reach. The sea had shown elsewhere exactly what it could do. And here, they had simply decided to stop believing it. Let us come back to that ordinary evening one more time. New faces now. People to whom no warning would ever come. A fisherman mends his net in the last of the light, thinking of the morning tide. A grandmother stirs a pot over the fire and waits for her family to gather. On the beach, children chase each other across the sand. A young man carries water toward his house. A teacher walks home along the shore. In the doorways, old people sit and watch the sea go dark, the way they have on every evening of their lives. It is a calm evening, warm, with nothing unusual in it. The kind of evening no one remembers, because nothing is supposed to happen in it. No one is watching the water. No one is checking a path to higher ground. No one is thinking about danger. There is no siren on this coast. There is no voice on any radio waiting to warn them. There is nothing between these people and the sea but a few minutes of soft golden light, and the clock is already running. In a very short time, everything here will be gone. That is why no one is ready. That is exactly why no one is ready. It begins a few minutes before 7. First, the ground gives a small, gentle sway. It is soft, almost polite. People know this feeling. It is a normal earthquake, the kind this coast has felt many times, and they wait for it to pass. Then, minutes later, the real shock arrives. Now the ground does not sway. It slams, hard and fast, up and down. Walls crack. Posts shudder. People stumble out of their houses into the open. This one does not stop quickly. It goes on and on, longer than a strong earthquake should. In the ground itself, cracks open, and water pushes up through the sand. It measures about 7 on the scale scientists use. On its own, a shock that size shakes a whole region, rattles the shelves, frightens everyone, and then, almost always, lets people go back to their beds. Almost always. But out at sea, in the dark, that shaking has already knocked the unsteady slope loose. The floor of the ocean has changed its shape. And now the worst of the night is coming, and it is coming fast. The wave that is now moving toward the shore cannot be seen from land. Out in deep water, it is low and long. A swell a boat could ride over without ever feeling it. But it is fast. Across open water, a wave like this travels as fast as a jet plane in the sky. It crosses the distance from the broken slope to the shore in the time it takes to walk a short errand. And here is the cruelest stretch of the whole night. The danger is already racing toward the coast, and the people on the shore still know nothing at all. The shaking has stopped. They calm the frightened children. They light lamps in the doorways. Some are already thinking the worst is behind them. Out at sea, the water draws closer. Every second it comes nearer, and there is no one and nothing coming to tell these people what those seconds truly mean. And here is the heart of it. There was no warning system on this coast, no siren, no signal, no service anywhere watching this stretch of sea. Worse, the one clue the world had was a lie. The earthquake had measured only about 7. In that year, a shock that size was thought too small to raise a killing wave. The true danger had come from the hidden landslide below, and that no one was watching for at all. The science of the day had dismissed it as too rare to fear, so the only warning came from the sea itself. A few minutes after the shaking, a deep boom rolled along the coast, like thunder on a clear evening. Then a strange roar, like a low-flying plane, like a great ship, moving east along the shore and then back to the west. People walked down to the beach to see what was making the sound, and the sea was behaving strangely. It was bubbling as if it were boiling, and it was pulling back, drawing away from the land, laying the wet seabed bare. To the people on the sand, this was a wonder, not a threat. They did not know the oldest rule of the sea. The water always comes back.
Perfect out here. We should.
That was the mistake at the center of this story. The sea gave its one warning, and there was no one there to read it. The pulling back of the water was not a marvel. It was the ocean drawing breath before the blow. But some understood that something was deeply wrong. In Arup, there was a man named John Sanawe, a former army officer, who stood and watched the sea with older, warier eyes. He saw the far water rise on the horizon and seemed to burst, throwing spray high into the last of the light.
What does it mean?
He heard the boom that followed, like distant thunder on a cloudless day. He heard the sea hiss and pull back, and then, for a few long minutes, he heard nothing at all. Out of that silence came the roar of something like a jet. He looked to the sea, and where the water had burst open, a wave had formed. And it was coming, fast. For a few who read the signs, there was a tree to climb, or a canoe to push into the lagoon. But for almost everyone else on that shore, in that last handful of minutes, there was simply no time. Now forget the tall blue wall of water from the films. This is not that. This is something worse. The first wave comes in low, a broken wall of foam no higher than a man. It is full of sand and logs. It knocks people down. It floods across the strip of sand, and still it does not look like the end of the world. Then the second wave comes. It does not break far out. It rears up at the beach, up to the tops of the coconut palms, as high as a building of 4 or 5 floors. And it falls. It is not blue. It is not clean. It is black and heavy with sand and timber and broken houses. It does not curl and slide back. It comes on, and it does not stop. There is a roar you feel inside your chest. There is the grind of everything solid being torn apart. There is water where a village stood, and then there is no village. Arup is gone. Warapu is gone. Scoured down to bare sand and a few concrete slabs where the schools had been. Along 14 kilometers of coast, a stretch you could walk in a single morning, the houses are simply erased. And beyond this dark coast, the world sees nothing. There are no cameras here, no lights, no telephones, no broadcast, no voice on any radio to say what is happening. A whole stretch of country dies in complete darkness, and out there, no one even knows. There is no famous name to give you here, no hero at a microphone calling out a warning to the last. There was no microphone, and there was no warning to give. There were only the survivors, in the pitch dark, holding on to one another so as not to lose their way. A strange yellow glow rose over the sea, and by that light they began to search for their families. The first help from outside would not reach them for 16 hours, a whole night and half a day. The full rescue would not come for nearly 2. And now the hardest truth of the night. The time was there. Between the shaking and the killing wave, there were about 20 minutes. That is long enough for a person to walk to safety, if there had been any safety to walk to. But there was no high ground on that strip of sand. There was no siren to turn them inland. There was no voice to say, "Do not go down to look. It is not over." And so, in that silence, they read the calm as safety. Some walked down toward the strange, retreating sea, and thousands made the last decision of their lives on a single, quiet lie. That a small earthquake on a gentle coast could never become this. The cost of that silence is almost too large to hold. Along this coast, about 12,000 people had been living in the villages by the sea, roughly the population of a small town. More than 1,600 of them were killed, and later counts run as high as 2,200. Around 500 more were never found. In the worst-hit villages, 4 out of every 10 people were gone before the sun came up. 10,000 survivors lost their homes in a single evening. Whole families vanished together. Villages that had names and schools and churches simply stopped existing, and the warning had always been there. It was only buried, twice over. It was buried in the earth. The lagoon behind the villages was itself the scar of an older collapse, proof that this ground could drop and the sea could pour in. The record was there, in the very shape of the coast, for anyone who chose to read it, and it was buried in the way the world thought about danger. Scientists had long treated a landslide beneath the sea as too rare to matter. Governments had let the old tsunami warnings lapse. Nearby coasts had been struck in the years just past, and the news had faded almost before it was heard. The knowledge existed. The evidence existed. The people who could have understood it existed. And every one of those warnings had been allowed to fall silent until the sea itself had to teach the lesson again. When it was finally over, some things did change. This disaster taught the world a lesson it had refused to learn. A modest earthquake can hide a monster. The sea can rise with almost no warning at all. And people on any low coast must be told one simple thing. When the ground shakes hard and long, do not wait. Do not go down to look. Go up and go now. The villages were not rebuilt on that thin strip of sand. The survivors were moved back from the water onto higher, safer ground, out of the sea's reach. The lesson was written, at last, into the map itself. But the people who paid for that lesson will never see it. They will never know that their coast is watched now, where once there was only silence. They will never see the safer villages that grew out of their last night. They slept in ordinary villages, on an ordinary evening, beside a sea that had fed them for 100 years and had never once turned on them. And in the dark, without a single warning, the water came. If you want their story to be remembered, tell me which story I should reconstruct next. Write it in the comments, and I will take you there. The small earthquake that hid a monster. Papua New Guinea, 1998. 20 minutes, the tsunami. No one saw coming. The sea gave one warning, and there was no one to read it.